Hello and welcome to everyone across the nation joining today's workshop on how to merge duplicated student records. This workshop focuses on using CASAS e-tests online together with TOPS Pro Enterprise Online for bringing together two different records of the same student in your online database. This function is available with both basic and enhanced access. In other words, no TOPS Pro Enterprise license is required. Student records can be merged by the TE Enhanced or ET Basic user at your agency. In other words, the person who primarily manages your data. This is one of 23 complimentary CASAS Online implementation workshops. This is a training room set up to conduct all 23 workshops. You are not expected to attend all 23 workshops. However, we do highly recommend attending as many as possible. Online help documentation is available on our website under Training and Support. ET for e-tests help documentation and TE for TOPS Pro Enterprise help documentation. Please be sure to bookmark these as your electronic go-to resources, particularly under the ET help documentation, the CASAS e-test online guide, which provides information covered in these workshops. Today's workshop will cover section 8.3. Now let's go ahead, and that is in the data management section of the guide. All right, here on merging duplicated student records. Now before we get started, let me clarify the main domain name. Let's see, I'm going to put, whoops, type correctly. The production server is located at etestsonline.org. That is the main domain name address. This is where you will produce live data. You will access eTests through the center of your screen, access TOPS Pro Enterprise from clicking the link in the upper left corner of your screen, or if you've already installed a client on your local machine, then you can put a shortcut in your system tray, or you can access TE from the shortcut automatically placed on your desktop. The simulation server, which is what we use for demonstration, I'm entering that URL in the chat box here. This is, whoops. Let's see, that's not the screen I want to see, is Rolling Hills Adult School. This is a fictional database with fictional data, a database that refreshes nightly so that you can work with a fresh database at the start of any given day. Please know that any work that you do in the database is completely wiped out, so it is not present the next day. That includes if you happen to have registered your computer or created testing sessions or even administered tests to yourself. But please use the simulation server to experiment and explore without risk of compromising your live data. Folks, I encourage you to ask questions along the way throughout today's workshop. Don't be shy. And if there is any area that, or give me the opportunity to clarify any information that I may be sharing or what I am demonstrating on the screen. And if we don't get to your questions or you think of questions afterwards, please don't hesitate to contact me at dmontgomery@casas.org. We also have a team of technology support team members that you can reach at techsupport@casas.org. I would definitely commit that email particularly to memory. There's every member of the technology team is notified simultaneously when a message comes in, so you have greater chance of receiving a prompt response when you address or send messages or inquiries to techsupport@casas.org. All right, folks, with that, we'll go ahead and get into today's workshop. And what I'd like to do is to bring up this image again. Whoops, a little bit too large there. Here we go. All right. Folks, to ensure the integrity of your data or monitor your data collection efforts, Regular ongoing review of your data is a must. For both basic and enhanced users, this involves routinely monitoring your data to ensure consistency with IDs particularly, and searching for possible duplications. This is your starting point to maintaining accurate data, since all records related to the student are linked solely by the student's ID, or more specifically, the student's demographics record. Agencies that export test data to a third-party system, such as an external reporting system that you may be required to enter test results. Some of you may be doing that manually. Well, the online system has the capability of creating an export file. If your third-party system or that external source has the ability to receive that export file for automatic import into that database. However, folks, once you begin sharing data with an external source, it is imperative that IDs match between both systems. So this is why I advocate, starting with the IDs. There is also, for those of you who may be joining us from California, we at Title II funded agencies specifically are directed to regularly monitor and use their a data integrity report as a way to evaluate their data collection efforts and monitor the pulse of their organization. The data integrity report is only available to enhanced users, so if you have purchased a TOPS Pro Enterprise license, or you are within a state or within an organizational entity that is providing you enhanced access, then by all means the data integrity report is I would say, equal to routinely monitoring the student demographics list for consistency with IDs and picking up on duplicated student records. So folks, I hope that makes sense. Student records may be duplicated unintentionally if a different student ID were entered due to a typographical error. For those of you who participated in the workshop preceding this, I demonstrated how to manually add a test record as well as import a test record. Well, and I also quickly demonstrated importing a student record because, of course, the student record, particularly the student demographics record, must pre-exist before you can attach any child records to that parent record, the student ID or student demographics record. So I imported a student file as well as I imported a test file. Well, let's say that I did in fact mistype the ID. That was an intentional, unfortunate oversight or error on my part that will make things complicated when the student goes for testing, because if the student is entering one ID but the online system identifies that student with a different ID, then you may find some complications there. Just to calm any fears for your proctors, please direct your proctors to routinely access the students or tests menu. Let me just quickly bring up the management console here of eTests. If a student is having trouble remembering their ID, they forgot their ID, the proctor doesn't have access to the ID with any other application running on their machine, for example, they can reference the student record as it pre-exists in the online database, either through the students menu or the test results menu. For example, the students menu, they can quickly click into this menu and filter, and I have the best luck searching on first name. I wouldn't make a practice on searching on last name because last names frequently change. And you may not want to type the whole entire first name because a lot of people go shorten their name, like Richard, Rick or Richard, or Susan and Susie and so forth. But let's say I have this student here, Susie, and I refresh this. Then I have a Susie Galejos and I have a Susie student here. And so this way I can see the ID as it pre-exists in the database for either one of these students. And of course I can also reference their last test if I were curious and wanted to be sure that, okay, a previous test exists. It doesn't tell you what the next assigned test is, but your proctors have the assurance that if the student types in their ID as it exists in the database, that they will in fact get a next appropriate test assigned to them based on these results. Let's go back over here for just a moment. Students on new intake sessions, if a proctor is conducting, and this is, let me go back here. This is one of the primary reasons I advocate having separate sessions for intake and post-testing, is that on post-testing sessions, the session is configured specifically to lock the creation of new student records. This is your safeguard to avoid the duplicated student records. So the student must type their ID as it pre-exists in the database. Intake sessions, these intake sessions allow new records to be added to the database live at the time of testing. So if a student, say, is checking out different sites, and this is a common occurrence, they may go to one site where your school or operation provides classes or programs. They may go through testing, and some students, maybe they didn't feel good about how they tested, so they might show up at another site and say again that they are a new student. That has in fact happened. Well, if the proctor determines that that's a new student or suspects that that is a new student and allows the student to test through an intake session, a new record will in fact be added. So it's possible that the student may type in an ID very similar to what they used at another campus, but maybe it's mistyped in some way. Then that in fact will create a duplicated record. Now, depending on how long duplicated records went undetected, the student may have one or more related child records, such as program records of the same, such as program, class, or test records. The merge function will bring together all related records for the same student. There is a merging navigator panel, and let's go ahead and launch TOPS Pro Enterprise here. Sign in with the generic ID. Now folks, as mentioned earlier as we were getting started for this workshop, not everyone is granted merging capabilities. CASAS will set up one user identified for your agency as the person who primarily manages your data. It is that one single individual that CASAS enables merging functionality. Now that individual can grant like credentials to any other staff member, but that is at your discretion. From the Records menu, select Student Demographics. The Student Demographics lister will list students in the current program year. You can always remove this filter to see students across all program years combined. You can pre-sort or pre-select different site locations, and I'm going to right now just concentrate on South Campus as my example for today. And I'll go ahead and split this name column header. I don't find the single name column to be very efficient, especially if you are the individual routinely monitoring the student demographics lister to try to pick up on any duplicated records. You can hide any column that you don't intend to use by clicking in the column and say, or actually any column for that matter, or no, it has to be the individual column, I'm sorry, to hide that column. Now I have a first, middle, and last name column. I can alphabetize by first name or alphabetize by last name. Let's just go by first name here. And now you see these records. So just simply viewing and observing these records, we have a couple of students with Lynn, but notice these clearly are two different students. Okay, so we'll continue down. We have a Luis Perez and a Luis Granados. Okay, a few Marias there, a few Miguels, Richard, and we have a sample student here. These are the two students we imported. Now let me just remove the current program year filter. And notice here we have a couple of duplications. We have a sample Sam, same identical date of birth, male. It's recommended to have, in addition to an ID, first and last name, date of birth, and gender at minimum in your online database. This is so utterly beneficial when managing and monitoring your the integrity of your data. We also have a duplication here for a Susie student. One is missing a date of birth, but it looks like if you analyze these or compare these IDs, these are very, very similar. So you could make an educated guess and determine, okay, this also is a duplication. You may also want to reference the IDs to be sure, or any other data elements in an external registration system to make that final determination. But let me go ahead and start with Sample Sam as my first example on merging duplicated student records. Now, before I do, I just want to point out this toolbar across the top. The merge function is generally contained in the More button. In other words, it's part of this cluster of buttons that there is no room to display in this active toolbar here. So notice merge is non-functional right here, but it is there. That merge button does not become active until you highlight two suspected duplicated records. So by clicking once on one record, holding your Shift key or Control key, you can safely do Shift if the duplicated record is right next to the student. However, you would not use the Shift key. You would use the Control key if the records were somehow separated. Okay, so I'm going to, whoops, use the Shift key. Oops, I'm sorry, I highlighted the two wrong records there. Okay, so these, let's say that these are my duplicated records. Folks, you can even, let's see, I'll just simplify this list by simply just filtering so that you just see those two records here at the top. All right, now that I have those two records highlighted, I go to the More button, and now the Merge button is available. Now let me emphasize, folks, that only two duplicated records can be merged at a time. If more than two records are duplicated, such as a third or even a fourth record, you have to merge two records at a time, and once those two are merged, then merge the merged file with yet another duplicated record. Also, records can only be merged per site location. You may notice that students may have records, identical records for that matter, or they could be slightly different, but records with the same exact ID at multiple campuses. That's perfectly fine, and that's how this online system is designed. TOPS, TOPS Pro Enterprise, TOPS stands for Tracking of Programs and Students. So the online system is literally tracking uh, uh, tracking the students as they are participating in programs and classes at the different sites within your entire agency. When you generate reports such as Fed table reports or your data integrity report, those specific reports will aggregate data for the student. In other words, will take the same student across all sites within your entire agency and merge or aggregate all child records into one record for the purpose of that report. Okay? Now, so let me just pick up. I don't want to get too detailed. My apologies for doing so. I want to keep this simple. So you highlight two records. That activates the merge button. Go ahead and click the merge button. And clicking the merge button now will display a merge wizard. The merge wizard will display, will highlight areas of these combined records that need to be solved. So you're solving conflicting fields per entity. Notice over here in the it's no longer called a navigator, but what it's called is an entities to be merged. Notice here, and it's probably, let me increase the view here. It says student. So this is one entity of these records combined. There could be additional entities listed here, folks. So be mindful of what you see over on the left. Enterprise will list all areas where where conflicts are present. These two records only have one entity to be merged, and notice here the circle with the slash. So this means that this student record has conflicts in just this one particular entity, which is the student. Now, you have to solve conflicting fields per entity. You have two options. Option one is to set all records, or essentially to solve all records to record one. If you click this button, that will simultaneously solve each of the highlighted fields here. And there's actually, if I scroll down, there's only these two highlighted fields. It will automatically set everything to record one, and it will combine the records and assign this ID, as well as if record one here, there's no middle name. All right. You can do likewise set all to record 2. It will take on this ID, and it will will add the middle name to this record combined. You can set all to newer or set all to older. The newer one basically will set all conflicting fields to the newer values, and it's not always known which record contains the most current values as compared to, say, the older values. If you choose to go this option, then your next step is, well, and I'll go ahead and demonstrate this. For example, if I say set all to record 1, that notice now the solved area populates, and you would mark all fields resolved, and then ultimately apply the merge. Okay, when you click all fields resolved, you can yet review that complete merge record for this information. Now let me reset all, so I can just undo that there. And so the same holds true if I did these other demonstrations. That's option 1. Now, the second option is solving conflicting fields per entity. So let's say here, I can set this, say, to record 1 if that is the standard method for assigning IDs for our agencies. This is missing a lot of digits, so I'll solve this one here. There's no conflict in the first name, but in the middle name. One record's missing a middle name. My preference would be to have more information than less, so I'm going to choose the second record and solve that field there. Oh, sorry, and I forgot to mark solved here. Okay, so now I've essentially combined as much information possible, combining those two records. So you can solve each field individually. That automatically, because I clicked solve per field, I'll just reset this for just a moment. I set this to the first one here, set this to the second one there. You could click solved here, or you can go up here, mark all fields solved. That simultaneously does the same thing. Then I ultimately click apply merge. Now folks, once you apply the merge, this cannot be undone. Now you repeat that step. I'm sorry, I got out of that too quick. You repeat those steps for each entities to be merged. Remember the entities to be merged on the left? I forgot to show you how that was checked now. It no longer had the circle with the slash indicating that there were still conflicts to be solved. So now you see there is one complete record here, sample S SAM. Okay. Now let's try the other my other example. I have this Susie student here. Susie student, these are two examples of merges. Now, our duplications. Let me add this child lister so that we can simultaneously look at each record. For example, this record right here. If I look at in-program years, this first record highlighted is missing a current program year record, whereas if I toggle here to the second record, this student does have a current program year record. I can go to, say, tests. Let's see which students may have tests as an example. Notice this second record here has a test, whereas the first record doesn't have a test. But these are still duplicate, and we can go in more of these areas, but I just wanted to bring those couple of examples there. Okay, so we're going to merge both of these records and take the best of the best between the two records. So highlight both records, go to the More button, merge, to bring up the merge wizard. There is just one entity to be merged. Let's go ahead and set this. I'll choose this as my standard ID. This looks good here. But here we definitely want to have the date of birth rather than not having the date of birth. Again, you can solve each area individually or click mark all fields solved. And notice now the entities to be merged, that is now a check mark, so this is good to go. If there were other entities, again, they would be listed here. And some users get caught by that. They don't observe this and they'll attempt to complete the merge, and the merge wizard will not complete if there are additional entities to be merged. So please be mindful of that. We're going to go ahead now and apply the merge. The merge was successful, and now the database is automatically refreshing. Now we have one record that includes the date of birth as well as includes the test results. Folks, that's it on merging duplicated student records. There is also under the Help menu, Contents, merging duplicated records right here, as well as the document in section 8.3 in the guide, which brings a little bit more detail. Yes, that is correct. You don't have to choose the test to merge. It automatically pops over. You can only merge a student demographic record, and the system will automatically merge any child records. Often, and this is a mistake that some individuals will do, they'll go to the tests lister, and they'll either notice, say, and I'm just highlighting one record as an example, let's say the name is mistyped or the ID is incorrect, and they'll double click into that hoping that they can correct the name or correct the ID, but you can't do that on a child. You cannot correct IDs or names, any demographic elements. You can't, and those two specifically, names and IDs, you cannot correct on any child record that classes, programs, and tests. You have to do that through the student demographics record. Okay, and notice here, even if I clicked editing, I cannot edit the name or the ID. You can, this header, just as an FYI, this header is an active header, and because these are have lines under them, these are hyperlinks. So if I click this right here, this is a hyperlink that goes directly to that student record. I just clicked it, and notice now it opened up to the student demographics record. This is where you then can edit the ID or correct the name. But again, just to reiterate, for asking that question, when you merge student demographic records, it simultaneously merges any child records here. Folks, any questions about merging duplicated student records? You can see why we reserve this function for the data manager at your agency. You do not want to grant this ability to very many users at your agency. All right, folks, it doesn't appear there are any further questions. You have my contact information as well as the technology support team email. Please feel free to email any one of us if you have any questions. Tomorrow we're going to talk about access groups and adding users. These two topics really go hand in hand and for your benefit. Managing users through access groups is the way you want to go, and all agencies, basic and enhanced, have the ability to manage their users through access groups. This will provide to you optimal system performance, and that's all I'm going to say at this point, and because there'll be reasons why that you want to optimize system performance by managing your users through access groups as compared to individual user accounts, and we'll reserve that for tomorrow's workshops. Okay, thank you so much, folks, for your participation. Any further questions before we close today's workshop? Alrighty then, thank you so much, and we'll see you back tomorrow.